So I've made a few notes here, but maybe Sarah, could you introduce yourself first of all, please?
Yes, so I'm Sarah Giblin, and in the last year and a half, I've gone from being in my everyday normal office job to having an idea, prototyping it, funding it, and manufacturing it. And that's what happened in the last year, and now I'm sort of moving on to the next step, which is doing that again, and hopefully better, and for more people. And the idea that I had was, well, we'll talk about this in a moment, but it's a normal everyday product. It's a rucksack. I've never manufactured any kind of product before, but it's, you know, people do it every day, so I went and did it too. And that is why I'm now here.
So we met Sarah, Louise and myself met Sarah, I think it was about March time, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Down here, and actually Sarah was chatting away with Louise, and I wasn't part of the conversation originally, but I kind of overheard a little bit of what you were talking about, and came over and we started speaking, and immediately I was kind of inspired by what this young lady had already been up to at that moment in time, which was, I think if you can think back to March this year, where were you already with your first Kickstarter?
Right, so this time last year I had one prototype. November, October, I did my first Kickstarter campaign, which meant going to China in December, starting my production run in January. So by March, we were in the middle of Chinese New Year, which is why I was having a little bit of a break. So a few of my products have been manufactured, but I was about to wait for the large lot to come back. And that's when I came and spoke to Mark and Louise.
Fantastic. And off the back of that conversation, I thought, you know, we really do need to get Sarah involved in some of the things that we do down here at Grow. And we were rather ambitiously running lots of events back in, when was FOD, April, May time?
I've still got scars.
So back in April, and I was running an event, and I thought it'd be great to have Sarah, in fact another person here, Matt, wherever, yeah, Matt, invited a couple of these guys that have been involved in Kickstarter to come along and inspire the audience, you know, pretty much as I'd been inspired along the way. And so invited Sarah, who wasn't able to be here in person, to join us via Skype. And that went rather well, didn't it?
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that was just a lightning, it was called a lightning talk, wasn't it? So it was just here's a quick idea that we're throwing into the day, and hopefully it did what it was meant to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I continued to follow the journey. You were mentioning about your prototypes and the fact that you'd already then started to move into the first round of production, and through the power of social media, which Sarah is extremely good at, had already managed to communicate that the RiutBag was going to be available to buy. Now, I'd missed out on the first Kickstarter round, but when I heard that the bags were available to buy, I jumped in and I bought one. So
Mark is actually one of my early adopters. This is the first ever manufactured RiutBag. Oh, in fact, we should probably show people what the actual concept of the bag is.
Please
Some
do.
people might know already. I'm going to try it on one of these. I need a willing assistant. May I? Oh, would you come up? Okay, so normally, in fact, why don't I just ask you to try and open my bag up? That would be really great. You can fully hands-on, you know, be as rough as you like.
I can't, I think.
Do you already know about this product?
Not 100%.
Awesome, that's great. That's even better. Okay, so as you can see, this kind human being cannot get into my rucksack. That is all. Basically, for the last few years, I've spent a lot of time traveling between different cities, whether inside a country or internationally, on my own, with quite a lot of technology in my bag, which these days isn't just valuable technology, it also holds a lot of data. And so when I was working for a relatively small consultancy, I had a laptop in my bag that could access millions of pounds, possibly even billions of pounds worth of data. So when people brushed past the zips on my rucksack, I used to kind of go, is everything still there? I would just wonder, is my passport still there? Is my wallet still there? Are the devices that belong to my business still there? And I'd had enough of worrying about that. And so I wished to myself, I wished my rucksack were the other way around. No zips on the outside, and instead all of the zips against your back. And so that was the idea. And that's what I made, and and the RiutBag was born. So, just to quickly show you roughly what's going on.
Before you do, maybe I could ask, why Kickstarter?
Oh, right. I was a person with an idea. There's still only one person in my company, and I had saved up enough money to survive for a year in prototype, but beyond that, I did not have any funds, and I could have gone to the bank and asked for a loan for about £30,000. I could have gone to an investor, which at such an early stage in my company would have meant there was almost no value in my company, which would have meant giving a lot of the company away for my £30,000. Or what seemed much more sensible to me was an idea that can be used by pretty much anyone, that I should go online and say, Internet, do you like my idea? Would you want one of these? Would you pay money for something like this? That's why I chose it, because I put a certain amount of risk in. I'd invested in it myself to the extent that I'd left my job and used my savings to build it. But then I couldn't really risk anything else. I had nothing else to risk. So I then sort of asked people on the internet to, risk their £45 to £100 each to trust me and buy pre-order one of my bags on Kickstarter. Yeah.
How much did you want in terms of monetary value in the first Kickstarter round?
So I wanted £30,000 because I thought that would be enough to do it.
And how much did you get pledged in the end?
So in the first Kickstarter campaign, £62,000 were pledged by over 1,000 people. So at that point, I was relatively sort of lacking in confidence about my product. I'd never manufactured it before. I didn't know how it was going to come out. I'd only ever seen the prototype. So people were allowed to back it from £45 each, which just covered the cost of the bag and shipping. And some kind people put in up to 100 quid to kind of say, that's a really good idea. Whoever you are, well done. But there were relatively few of those. So yeah, £62,000 is what came out of the first Kickstarter campaign.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And how do you, you asked for 30 and you end up with 62. What do you do with the other 32K? How do you invest that back into the business?
Well, every single extra backer who came along and put money in required a bag. So it's only really incremental, the amount of extra money that you're getting. Because at this point, I thought I was making a production run of 1,000. As it turned out, when I sat down with the manufacturer, I actually needed to make 1,300, which meant that original minimum funding goal that I required was nonsense, but thankfully it went over. Of that £62,000, I actually received, so Kickstarter takes 5%. I will give them that 5% happily because there are millions of people on Kickstarter who see my product who otherwise wouldn't. And a small percentage also goes to the payment gateway people, so Stripe. So I actually got 56,000 of the money, and that went straight into paying for the manufacturer, and the rest of it went on postage, basically. So postage is expensive. Yeah, so it covered the cost of the Kickstarter just, and the rest of it allowed, I paid myself 800 quid of it, just to keep going for a few months, and also keep a few of my online, the things that I sort of do online, like SurveyMonkey and stuff like this, so that I could get everything to everyone, to my first 1,000 customers, and find their feedback. And with that feedback, I could then build new models.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I knew I needed to make a second production run so that I could actually sell something.
That's been quite a success, clearly. But I also saw, and one of the things that I really liked was around the time of my ordering the first bag. You're welcome.
How much did you pay? 45.
No, I gladly paid more.
Ah.
They were £70 by the
Yeah.
time. Oh, sorry.
No,
by
no.
the time Mark came along, so that was after the Kickstarter
Okay.
campaign. So people who partake in a Kickstarter campaign, you've got to thank them for the fact that they are even being a part of what you're doing. Without them, you couldn't fund what
They
you're
take
doing.
a risk.
They are taking a risk. It's possible that I wasn't going to do what I said I would. But by the time they were manufactured and I was selling them on my website, I did sell them closer to full price. But when you're right at the beginning, you don't really know how to price your product. So I'm still learning how to do that. Yeah.
What I liked, and what's really nice about you, is you share the entire journey with everybody on social media. And so there were videos that I was watching. And I know you do videos still at the moment, and maybe we can come on to that later, but tell us a little bit about the video experience and, the shipping and the container.
Right, yeah.
And
well, there's only one person in my business, and actually we were talking about this earlier. How do you bounce off people when you're trying to do something? That's normally a part of being in a business. I don't really have anyone to do that with. So to help me work out what I'm doing, I blog about everything right from the beginning. Before I even left my job, I started a blog to say, I'm kind of thinking of doing this thing. And then on the day that I left my job, I took a photo of myself driving to my prototyping company and kept kind of doing this and telling people what I was doing, which was helpful because there are other people out there who are starting businesses who are going, oh yeah, I suppose it's as simple as that. And it was also helpful for me because I can look back and go, when was I doing what? And what did I think about this at that point? So I've just kept doing that. With my Kickstarter backers, they've done everything that I asked of them, which is fund the project and continue to fund it. And now it's my job to not only do what I said I'd do, but also give them the confidence that I'm doing it. So every 2 weeks for my Kickstarter backers, I would give them a real update of what was going on. Whether I was on my way to China, in the factory, I was interested in what the factory conditions were like. So I did videos that showed who was working in the factory, how old they are, how much they're paid, what the conditions are like. Try to get as much information as possible so that the Kickstarter backers and my RiutBag users understand what goes into a textile product. Because the stuff that we're making, this has been sewn by human beings at sewing machines. And it's so good to remember that because it takes quite a lot of time, it takes a lot of skill, and it just gives you a little bit of an idea of what it is that you're actually using every day. And for anyone who's interested in that, that's what I blogged for, with all these videos. And for anyone who isn't interested, they don't have to look at it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So back to Kickstarter. So it was, the first round was extremely successful, and clearly it enabled you to develop the first product. But a little bird tells me that you turned down Dragon's Den along the way as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, Dragon's Den got in touch and said, do you want to come on the show? And I immediately thought, oh, that's great. Because, anyone who is willing to help me get the message out there, I kind of want to go, yeah, great. But actually, I used to work as a journalist, and I know that TV and actually most journalism, as well as being informative, is also entertainment. And for Dragon's Den, it is as good TV for them if I crash and burn, if not better TV, than if I do well. Their main concern is not, can we help Sarah in her business? It is, can we get a good, can we make our viewers be entertained, talk about stuff on Twitter and keep everything going? So that was one of my concerns that made me actually think, should I do this right now? I am in my first steps of beginning to build this business, which again means it doesn't have as much value in it now as it will do if I keep building it. So going to an investor at this early stage is a great deal for them, but I actually think I can do the work for the next few steps. And finally, most of the companies in the world that are successful have not been on Dragon's Den. And I think it's good to remember that whilst as a kind of, you know, UK TV viewer, you get this disproportionate, you get this view that something like Dragon's Den is really important to starting up a business, because that's what, you know, of all the things that you're seeing on TV about startups, that's kind of one of them. But I don't think it needs to be done. And I would much rather organically or just normally build my business by people using the bag, telling people about it. I can tell people about it and they can make a decision for themselves about whether they really want this. Because if 1 million people try and buy my product tomorrow, they can't. There are going to be 2,300 that are made this production run. And so I can only have a manageable amount of customers at a time. And weirdly, that sort of grows with the amount that I can reach on social media. So at the moment, the balance is fine. If I suddenly want to, you know, dominate the world, then maybe. But I think it might be possible in other ways. So I said no.
So you've talked a little bit about the process that you used, and the fact that you used people in your network to test the ideas in the first place. But you've called the company Revolution in User Thinking. Where does that come from?
That's what Riot stands for. So Riot is the name of my company, RIUT. Revolution in User Thinking is exactly what that stands for. So I was just speaking to someone about an amazing book called The Art of the Start, which some of you may know. Do you know this book? The Art of the Start. It's by Guy Kawasaki. And he was Apple's software evangelist in the 80s, and I think again in the 90s under Steve Jobs. So he knows how to do the impossible job of trying to tell the world about something new and ask them to try to do something different. He actually wrote the book for tech startups, especially software startups, but someone gave me the book kind of saying, yeah, you know, you're thinking of starting up your business, maybe you should read this. And it's a fantastic book. It is so simple, it's so practical, and I basically used the structure in that book, and it said, on the first day of your new business, don't open Microsoft Word, and not just because he was an Apple person, but because you need to get out there and start doing whatever it is that you're going to do. So he said there were 7 steps. Let me see if I can remember them. Wait. Number 1, get your design specifications together. Number 2, finish a prototype. Do not just start a prototype. Finish your prototype. Then I think I've forgotten one of them. No, anyway. Number 3, ship a testable version to customers. Then number 4 is ship the actual version to customers. Number 5 is something else that wait. I think I've forgotten a couple along the way, but the final one is break even. And if you think about those as your massive milestones, then you just go as fast as you can to try and do those. They're super practical. You know, you kind of get what they mean. And I use that. But anyway, one of the things that he said along the way was have a mantra. Have something that's going to keep you motivated whilst you're doing this really difficult thing. And I was trying to kind of think about what I was designing, so this backwards backpack, this thing that has sort of turned around. I was trying to come up for a name with that, and I was trying to sort of think, is there anything, you know, what is it that's keeping me going in all of this? So, Revolution in User Thinking is a description of my RiutBag. It has literally revolved to fit around the user. There's a much more user-focused design. Revolution in User Thinking is my mantra because it describes the way that I think, and that is that I revolve all of my thinking around the user. I am, you know, the Dragon's Den thing in part was me not wanting to have my mind focused on profits, which is necessarily what an investor would want, but to focus so much on users that I make a really good thing, so that eventually the company is really successful. Also, I'm not a rucksack designer. I was just a rucksack user. And I genuinely believe that we as users of objects, whether it's chairs, the floor, the doors, the lights, whatever, the phones, whatever it is, that we can see design faults with things much more better than like large corporations that are looking at these things in a lab going, how can I innovate the rucksack? Let's give it red straps. That's kind of what they were thinking. They weren't looking at the thing in context. Otherwise, I think this would be a standard. And also in my company, through having this mantra, I've realized that I want the users to be involved in making my products. And that is why I say, give me feedback. What did I do wrong? What was right? What was really great? What doesn't the RiutBag do that you want it to? And through their thinking, through this user thinking, they build the RiutBags of the future. So revolution in user thinking is a description of what I've made and also how I do things. And it's a reminder to my customers, sort of my promise to my customers, to my users, that I'm thinking about them. And it's like a motto for me to keep me on track. So yeah, that's the revolution in user thinking.
Brilliant. And you mentioned along the way Guy Kawasaki. You wouldn't have been able to have actually met him or talked to him to, share this story with him by any chance?
I sometimes go out on a limb a bit. So whilst I'm sometimes stuck to my computer, I also really like to kind of go out and speak to human beings. And I read his book, and in the book he said, if you are starting up a company, why don't you get in touch with me? And I was like, oh, brilliant, he's even put his email address in it. By the time I emailed him, that email was gone. It's like, I read the first edition, which is about 5 years old, and his old venture capital company is stopped. So I was like, oh, the email address doesn't work, gutted. So I just guessed his Google his Gmail email address, which is guykawasaki@gmail.com. So it wasn't that hard to guess. But I was like, I'm sure maybe this will work. He's on Google+. And it went through, and all of a sudden my inbox, it's like, Guy Kawasaki. It's like, that's great. Keep going. And then it turned out he was coming to Berlin, which is where I live at the moment. So we just hung out for a day. And I did get to talk to him about this. And he thinks it's really funny that someone has made a textile startup rather than a tech startup out of his book. It just totally unintended, but he thinks it's great, so it's all good. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So definitely guess email addresses. I think that comes from, that was like when the internet first arrived in my house when I was about 13 or 14. But this thing about collecting email addresses that I found in chat rooms, and I think that's just stayed with me, so that I still think you can just guess email addresses. But whatever,
very
you
cool.
can.
Yeah, no, very cool. So on to the second Kickstarter, clearly, off the back of a successful first round, but I bet there was also lots of things that, you got in terms of feedback, but how did the process work?
It actually worked in that I am slowly learning what a company really is. So it got to, in May, I sent out 1,000 RiutBags. In April, what? April comes next? April, May, June and July, right. So I had about 200 RiutBags left, which I sold online to wonderful people like Mark. And at that point, I suddenly didn't have any stock. I was like, oh, I don't have any stock, I can't make any money. Oh, I know it sounds really sensible, right? Everyone knows this, but you have to learn these things, it turns out. So then I thought, wow, well, I need more RiutBags. And then I realized, it was actually really tricky. After my first Kickstarter campaign, you'd think I was just really happy and stuff, but it was really difficult. After the first Kickstarter campaign, everyone had their RiutBags. The only thing that was coming back, I didn't really get positive feedback from people at this point. I had a lot of negative feedback. So the only people, people who had problems, seams were coming undone, people were saying my RiutBag hasn't arrived in the post, and I suddenly had this lot of negativity coming back. But it was, it was 10 people out of 1,200. But I was like, oh, I need to do something. I need to be doing more, and I don't know what it is. So at that point, I thought, what I need to do is send out surveys to everyone and find out what they actually think, because at the moment I'm only hearing negative stuff. And at that point, sent it out to my 1,200 people. They gave me an actual picture of what was going on. So yes, the odd person had not received theirs in the post, but people were really happy across the board. They thought it was really good. One guy said he wanted to come out of retirement so that he could use this with a laptop and everything. He thought it was so great. And I sometimes you need a little bit of that, because you kind of can't see what's going on. And with that feedback, I suddenly realized there were things that I'd done wrong in the first design. So that allowed me to kind of go, I should really start thinking about this. But at that point, I also thought, right, when do I need to make all of this stuff? So this was back in June. And I thought, I should probably, if I'm going to make some more bags, I need to do this before Christmas. So, right, let's make a timeline. They need to be in people's houses by Christmas. That means they need to be back in like November, which means they need to be funded. I need the money from Kickstarter, if I'm going to do Kickstarter again, to be like here, which means I need to start the production run yesterday. Go! Quick! And I was like, quick, China, go! Make some new prototypes. I've got all the designs. And we started a new production run actually in July, end of July. And I had enough money I negotiated with the manufacturer that I'd pay a third up front, which I'd previously paid a half because they didn't know who I was and I'd never done this before. And I only actually had that amount of money left. So I had this third to pay up front and was like, because otherwise I'd be really screwed at this point actually. So I put my best into the two new designs, and that is what's come out. So the original was a 20-litre Riot bag, which 20 litres sounded about right. Someone online called it the huge grey beauty. It's giant. People can fit easily. Like, I know a lot of singers, right? I used to be anyway. I know a lot of opera singers, and they go on tour a lot, and they can easily take 2 weeks of stuff in this huge thing. Your laptop, your 15-inch laptop goes in the back, your A4 documents fit there, and cables and stuff are meant to go in here. These are bottle holders. People wanted bottle holders. I didn't want any bottle holders on the outside, because I didn't want there to be any pockets on the outside, because that's where you're going to put, I know myself. I would put my mobile phone and my keys and stuff there, but I don't want people to put their important stuff on the outside because I want them to have total peace of mind when they're wandering around. So I made these bottle holders, which are they sit inside the bag, but there's a little hole at the bottom so you don't put in your keys or money or whatever it is there, so that you just know this is for stuff that doesn't matter on the outside. And everything else is contained within. So you've got a top pocket here for your passport, your phone, your keys, all of this kind of stuff. And for the real pros who go around in the city, maybe use your Oyster card. Oh look, you've even got a card in there. That's so cool. Oh, it fits. So you've got little ticket pockets so that you keep the bag on your back as you're going around a busy city, and you just sort of slip out an Oyster card or whatever. So that's the first Riot bag. It's 20 litres. The concept has basically stayed the same, but with the feedback that I got, I've made 2 new models, and they're also in black and grey. Super slim R10, which is a 10-litre bag, but still has exactly the same capacity on the back. And this is for people who kind of, who don't really need to take a lot to work. They really need their laptop and maybe a few documents. And you can, be crushed in a tube or do whatever you like with that. And there's a few updates on the design. And then the R15 is much more of a kind of manageable day bag size. So it's a 15-litre bag as opposed to the 20. And it's in black. And actually, this is, if I'd really been if I'd been making a bag for me, this would be the one, because I wanted the plainest, blackest rucksack that would actually hold my stuff, and that's it. So with all of the feedback, that helped me build the 2 new designs, and that's what I put on Kickstarter 21 days ago. Yeah.
And Sarah asked for 42,000 this time, as opposed to the 30,000. And I just checked before we went live tonight, so it's probably gone up again. She's had 1,237 backers so far, with a current total of £123,276 pledged, and still 7 days to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Giblin, questions please.
Yeah. Any questions? And this can be, you know, the stupidest stuff, like what do you have for breakfast in the morning, to like really, you know, you can grill me on anything, any costs, anything. Go for it.
What brought you to this point? You don't, like, as in, what did you do before you went on this journey? You said you were a consultant, journalist. Obviously, you probably enjoyed what you were doing, but you weren't. This makes you more happy, I assume. Yeah, just what did you do before that point, basically?
So when I finished my A levels, I did go to university and I studied a little bit of economics, but ended up actually graduating in political philosophy. So that was a very impractical product. You know, it was nothing to do with anything practical. The only thing that I could actually do of any practical value was sing. So I was a classical singer, and when I was in Manchester, the BBC did all of their broadcasting for religion and ethics stuff from Manchester, which meant that I just sang on the radio every morning. So that was my job. We toured all over Europe doing that kind of stuff. It was really great. And then I moved to France, and then I moved to Germany. And when I got to Germany, I needed a job, and I bumped into these journalists who said, "Oh, brilliant, you can speak German and English. You go and do like all the English-speaking interviews, and we'll bring them back to our office, and we'll translate them into German, rather than sending a German off to go and speak to someone English. And we'll do the German stuff, and you can translate it into English, and we'll just spread stuff into different markets." So we did that, and that was like, you know, film stars and stuff that we were talking to. And then I got a phone call from my dad after I'd been hanging around in Berlin doing this sort of stuff, saying, "Didn't you want to become a lawyer?" I was like, "Oh God." "Yes, okay, I'm coming." And so I did actually go back to the UK and did one of these GDL courses. It was just like a really intensive course to try and become a lawyer. And then I almost became a lawyer, but that didn't quite happen, thankfully. And no offense to lawyer, it would have been an amazing life, but it's not for me. And then basically, I'd already had this idea, and I thought, right, I do need a job, I do need to be a proper person. So what I'm going to do is work in Reading, because there happened to be a flat nearby where I could live rent-free. And so I worked in Reading just actually initially as a secretary, but then they made me the PR and communications manager at this financial services firm. But they'd never really had a marketing department. And I was like, "You guys should be blogging to everyone about all this regulation stuff." And they said, like, "Do you want to do it?" I was like, "Do you want to pay me for it?" So then they made me into this role, which meant that I had enough money to actually save up and do this. So those are the sort of things I've done. Whenever I'm working, I try and do it with like my absolute all. So actually, I probably put as much effort into that PR job as I did into this, except for everyone must have been laughing at me because, you know, I wasn't getting paid that much, and I eventually felt like I was a firework being shot into a cement wall and was doing all of this work for almost nothing. You know, and that was when I thought, you know what, I've got so much energy and I've got this idea, and it's probably the best idea I've ever had. What if I put all of my energy into my own thing? Is this just an imaginary, you know, do I think I'm energetic, but I'm not really? And then I started doing it, and it turned out my few skills, I don't use my singing particularly, but my skills of blogging, doing little videos, talking to people, sketching out ideas and not worrying about what other people say, turns out that those are enough to start your own company if you want to. And other people can use their completely different skill sets to do exactly the same in a different way. So am I happier? I'm happier because I can choose how to construct my life. Like, my partner lives in Berlin. There was a time when I didn't know how to get a job in Berlin that would pay me enough, really. And doing this, my business is wherever my mobile phone is and my brain is. And that makes my life better. Also, I think it's really good. And I think in 10 years, I'm going to look back and go, that was a fantastic decision to go and do that. And that is what will make me happier. Am I happier? I don't think it's about happier. I'm more excited. Like, it's an adventure. I get to go to China. It's really difficult. It's really weird. And I like that. And I think I would much rather have a life full of that stuff than the security that I had in the other stuff, because that doesn't mean very much to me. Hello.
Hey, I've got 101 questions, but I'll ask my silly one instead.
Yes.
The BBC used to have a programme where they got a couple of ex-crims to test the security of the house.
Brilliant.
Have you ever thought about getting a couple of volunteers from your customer base, hiring probably an ex-professional pickpocket and filming it as a viral campaign to see if they could possibly pickpocket one of your bags in a crowded situation?
So awesome. I've been talking to a guy recently about viral videos, because until now I haven't really put very much of my time into trying to think about what a viral video would be. But it's so important, and that's a really good idea.
And especially with GoPro cameras and that,
See, I mean, this is where that is definitely the thing that would grab people's attention way more than my kind of, I want everyone to have peace of mind thing. But I do want everyone to have peace of mind, so I don't want to go, oh, who's out there trying to get you? Because in my first survey that I did of 1,000 people, 6% said they had something stolen from their bag, and 60% said that they were concerned about the security of their belongings on a daily basis. So what I'm trying to actually stop is not really opportunistic crime, even though that video would actually show the function of the bag way better. And I suppose all this concern is actually about worrying that there are criminals around. So I just have to sort it out in my own head to go, am I okay with that message? But yeah, that's a really good idea. Do you have another question from your 101?
The only other one was, I guess, about IP and about how you protect that and look after it.
So, in something like this, there's you've got the copyright and the drawings by the very fact that you've done them. I have Riot is mine. In terms of that's my logo, that's my brand, that's my trademark. So that's officially mine, and I've done the relatively small things like that. And then there was the question: do you patent something like this, or can you just have the relatively mild design protection? With this, I talked to a patent attorney, and we both agreed that even if there is a chance of patenting it, what you'd have to do is patent the absence of zips on the outside of the bag, because there are other bags that already have zips on the back. It's just this, this is weirdly the functional bit, and coming up with a negative patent or establishing that is extremely difficult, and defending that would be something that I'd probably spend the rest of my life doing. And I don't want to make legal history. I want to make bags. So I chose, even though there was a tiny chance that I could have done it, I wanted to not be litigious. And instead, I've actually said again and again, people don't know that this is an option. So I actually want to make a market for these kind of bags, which actually involves saying to other bag manufacturers, can you make your own Riot bag? Because I can't, not everyone in the world is going to want this design. And I want people to think, do I want a bag that's this way around or that's this way around? Because at the moment they only know of the other ones. And I stole that from Elon Musk, who was doing it on a very different scale. And he said he needs car manufacturers to bring an electric, to bring out their own electric cars so that there's a market for this stuff, so that we can all start competing. And that's what I want to do. And that is, so my protection is not really legal as much as brand protection, hence this revolution in user thinking thing. I have a real connection with my customers. They know that they are building the future RiutBags, which means that they come back. And also there's a thing that once you've worn it, you think, why would anyone ever put their bag the other way around? But then they could go off to another bag. So to another bag manufacturer that does it this way. So my protection is relatively mild. Anyone can do this. And I encourage them to. So I'm going to celebrate every bag manufacturer that does this, because I think it's kind of been done a little bit in the past, but it never stuck. And if I get to be the person who says, you know, it was the Riot bag that actually caught everyone onto the idea, I'm fine with that. Yeah. So that's my answer. Was there a question over here?
There was another one, but was there ever a time that you really thought about giving up, and what stopped you giving up?
I suppose post Kickstarter, just over the summer, it was, you know, I'm a pretty happy kind of person, and I found it difficult because I just had this very structured period from the beginning of the Kickstarter campaign through to the end of the Kickstarter campaign. Literally my whole life, it was on this web page that it said, Sarah's doing this then, and then she's doing this then, and this then, and this then, and these people are getting this then. And then there was this just beyond May 2015, I reached that date, and I was like, oh my God, I don't have a plan. And it was only, I didn't think I was going to give up, because I knew, or I had to work it out for myself, that obviously if you've done one production run, the only way that you're going to keep going is if you do a second production run. I didn't want to give up at any point, but I did hate it a little bit when I didn't give myself any structure. So that's why that thing that we were talking about earlier, this kind of knowing what the next very practical next step is so important. And I just needed to find that. And it sounds pathetic, but I honestly just went back to this book, The Answer at the Start, and was like, where am I in this book? Because I've actually done all of this. I was like, oh yeah, break even, go. And then suddenly I knew that all of these things had to happen again, and I'm the only one who's going to do it. So yeah, never wanted to give up, but definitely found it difficult over the summer. And I think that's going to come again and again, but it's okay to go through that as well, I think. Yeah.
Question. You talked a lot about being a business of one. When do you see that changing? And how do you feel about that?
I kind of like it. I really like I like my relationship with other people that I work with being a contractual one, because I can have such high expectations of them. I can say to my manufacturer, you said you'd do this, and that's what I'm paying you for. And we work on that basis really well. You know, I don't think they've ever had anyone who works with them to say, we need to make sure that there are no surprises come up. And so I really like that contractual relationship. So actually, the way that I'd like to build the business for now is that I'm the only employee as the director, and that I work with other companies sort of on a satellite basis. So I have at times got a PR company that I work with, and I've got my freight company, I've got my distributors, and until the only way that I can see that changing is if I get so big that I can, buy my own warehouse, or I can buy my own manufacturer, or I could do something like that. I'm very far away from that. And weirdly, it's manageable at the moment, but in order to grow a little bit, I am going to have to give some of this away. But the way that I'll do it is probably by getting like a virtual assistant somewhere, and hire a manager who on a freelance basis can help me with like distributing to different countries. And what I like about that is that they already bring their expertise with them, and hopefully they can teach me, so I understand about it. So that at least for the foreseeable future, I don't plan to have employees, because I'm still learning what this all means. So until I really know what I'm doing, I wouldn't want to bring anyone in anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of the plan, and that's how it works at the moment. And it's been so helpful in the first year. with just me being here, because there have been things that have come up. Like, I worked with a prototyping company in Cheltenham, and they were great. But when the first samples came back from the Chinese factory, they were really tiny, and I was like, why is this so small? And everyone obviously went, oh, it must be the Chinese, I don't understand anything. And it turned out, when I went back through all the emails that had been coming via me and all of this sort of stuff, because I'm the one who's handling it all, that the prototyping company had just put in the wrong centimetre height of the bag. And it's only by being the one person that deals with everyone that you can go back through everything and work out where the problems arose. Well, that's just one example. But at the beginning, I find it really helpful being one person. And if it stops the company at some point because I don't have enough capacity, at that point I'll have to rethink it. But I like it.
You mentioned like freedom and being happy. What would you say was the single biggest key driver? Is it sort of like, I can relate as an original founded company, obviously now working with someone else, but for me it was very important to do something that defined me as an individual, and I'm getting that from you, that it's your baby, you've got control of it, you're protective of it. Is that something that, is it money, or is it sort of, I guess it's not money actually. No.
It's only not money because there's no money in it at the moment. But weirdly, I quite like living on a zero budget. That's why I live in Berlin, because the rent is so cheap. So I really like all of this, feeling very hungry and having to make decisions about, that a bet that hopefully will make the company money. Why am I doing this? There's something about this thing that I said earlier, which is that I want to be able to look back and see that I did something that was really good. I think it's sort of as simple as that.
Same.
And at the moment, sorry, I think I need a little bit of water. I'm getting emotional.
Sorry, yeah.
Right, let's see. It's something like, there's no one else in the world who was making this thing. And I had this idea, and even though I know loads of people have had this idea, because they write to me all the time and go, oh, I've already thought of that. I'm like, well, you didn't make it, and you didn't sell it to me, because otherwise I would have bought it and stayed in my job. And it felt, and this is not like some big mystical thing, it honestly felt like it would be a better use of me in the universe to be doing this than to be doing the thing that I was doing. So I did that.
Absolutely.
It's like,
I think that most people, I wouldn't want to get to the end of my life and look back and go, I've done this corporate job, and actually, for most people, they can't look back and say anyone else could have done their job. Whereas if you create something as an individual, which is an expression of yourself, then that's an amazing thing to do.
And I think most people, lots of people in their roles, that we might go, oh, it's the corporate, whatever. But if that person is the best person to be doing that job in the universe, then that's great.
Yeah.
And there's now someone doing that job that's way better at it than me, and that's really good. And I remember someone once giving me an example of a guy who was really rubbish at his job, because he was always talking to everyone and he was never doing his job. And then eventually they put him on reception, and he was fantastic. Like he was doing the thing that he was meant to be doing. And I don't mean to in some, it just, if you're doing something that is using all of your skills, it's really good. So all I need to do now is just involve some singing and this, and I'll be fine. But I think it's something like that. Yeah.
I was going to ask a question about sort of the nitty-gritty design side.
Yeah.
And you said you're not a designer yourself, as you said, but you've got a great-looking bag. It looks amazing.
Thank you very much.
Out of curiosity, what was the company in Cheltenham?
They're called D2M Innovation. Have you heard of them?
I used to do an internship there.
They're really good.
Yeah.
They're really
My auntie works as well in the copywriter. And I know all the guys in the office, Alex. And,
they're really great. And I went there, I visited 2 different companies, and it was like I said, it was the first day that I hadn't been working my job. And I went to visit the the bad one, and it was actually a little bit gutting. I got there and they kind of said, "Can't you just do this yourself?" I was like,
They've split now, I think.
"Do you mind money to do this? Is that, you don't want to do this?" And they're like, "You could just get a freelance person to do this." I was like, "Okay, why have I driven across the country to speak to you?" So really, it was gutting. And then I went to see this other company, D2M.
Yeah.
It just really mattered that they said, "We've looked through everything you've done, we get it, we've got some criticisms, how fast do you want to do all of this?" And I felt, you know, like that it's very expensive to prototype because you're asking 3 designers to work on something for 6 months. But it was 100% worth it, and they were great. Yeah, so that's
Small world.
Yeah, but I couldn't find any other textiles prototyping companies in the UK.
So it was a few years before I probably would have been working on them.
Yeah, well, for anyone who's interested, we went straight from my sketches to someone called Anna who was working at a sewing machine. So we didn't, there was no software involved. You know, we didn't do any modelling like that.
Yeah, they're pretty hands-on with mocking stuff up.
Yeah, it's
Some
really
people
great.
would send in like stuff drawn on the back of a napkin and things.
That's essentially
It's
what I
just
did.
like, yeah, because like I said, it looks amazing. And I was wondering, because you're very much, it's all you, the company, how you managed to, like, what help you had and what part is. I guess you sort of said probably within the whole way through the project, but like, don't like that bit, that's crap, add this on, that sort of thing.
It already looked like this when I gave it to them, and you know, if you look at my hilarious pencil drawings, that's what the bag looks like. And then it was just really, how do you actually put this together so that so a manufacturer can remake it and it stays together, and how do we go for material choices? And the material choices, great on the Cordura, bad on the one that we did for the base. It turns out that was not something that I could use. But yeah, they were great. So if anyone is making anything in textiles, I think they also do plastics and metals, then D2M Innovation, great. Your question?
How do you fulfil your orders? It's quite a lot of bags to stuff in envelopes.
Yeah. I read up on, before I did my first Kickstarter campaign, I just read a lot of blogs that said, don't do it on your own, you're going to be very slow, it's going to be way more expensive in the post for you to go down to your local post office. So I found, I didn't even know what I was looking for. There are all of these words like fulfillment and distribution and freight forwarders, and I'm like, do you all do the same thing? I didn't really know. And eventually I was like, right, what do you do and what do you call yourself, so that I can just write this down and I can look for other people who do this too. I needed to send 1,000 out in May, and so for that reason I looked for this company called Parcel Force. I still don't know. They're not, fulfillment, I think, is what they do. And I just spoke to a few companies, and some of them just didn't take me seriously at all, because it was difficult for them, because I was saying, I might be doing this thing, and I'm kind of sort of funding it online, and no one really knows whether, I can tell you on a certain date in the future whether this is actually going to happen or not. And no, I've never made bags before, and I also have to go and make them first, and all of this sort of stuff. But one company said, yeah, we get it. That's fine. You know, we've only started up in the last few years as well. So we'll talk to your freight people, and once it comes through customs, we'll make sure it comes right up to Lincoln, that's where it is, and we'll basically put it in our warehouse and send it all out. And because they are sending stuff into Europe and into UK so much, they get much better postal rates. So yeah, I use them, they're great. It turns out posting stuff out is probably the trickiest bit of all of this, because you will suddenly go from, you're doing one big thing, and then you're doing 1,000 things. And when you're doing 1,000 things, a small percentage will go wrong. But it's still an individual at the end who says, where is the thing that I paid for? So that's how I do it, yeah. Hello.
Hello.
I backed your thing on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I know you did, thank you.
Cool.
So it's coming. Just busy. So a couple of questions. How many other bags do you own yourself?
Oh, I'm a one bag kind of person.
Yeah, you don't have hundreds of bags?
I used to have I had my one rucksack, my one black rucksack, and I loved it, but I hated it. It had a lot of straps that made it look like I was going up a mountain, and lots of straps that I never used that sort of clipped into all sorts of places. I hate buying a new bag because all I want is a really plain black bag, and I don't want it to do anything else. And I basically, when my bag dies, that's a sad day for me because I have to find a new one. So that's the kind of bag person I am. When I survey people, this time I asked people, sorry, how many bags they own. 6% of people own more than 5 bags, more than 5 rucksacks. Are we talking about rucksacks here?
Yeah, no, I've
2
got
rucksacks, loads of
a
bags.
loft full of rucksacks, but
I have no
I
idea.
do walk up mountains and stuff. But
So you have different
I've also
rucksacks.
got urban rucksacks as well.
Amazing! I didn't even know these people existed. I thought everyone was like me, and that's actually what's so good about doing the surveys, because then you remove all of your own biases from the design process, because I just thought everyone was like me. Everyone's got a 13-inch laptop, everyone's only got one this is all lies. No, it turns out everyone's got a 15-inch laptop, and all the poor 17-inch laptop users abuse me every day online. I have one bag, and now this is my bag. This is my ideal bag.
Second question, Indiegogo. I think you mentioned last time we spoke before that you were maybe going to do a Kickstarter, or maybe you were going to look at Indiegogo.
Yeah.
Did you consider Indiegogo for the second campaign?
I went to the Gadget Show live because there was the British Inventors Project, and the RiutBag was chosen as one of the finalists. So I got a little stand there for free, which is great. And a woman from Indiegogo came round. I was like, oh, you're real, because they're just on the internet, and you don't really think a person is actually going to come. It'd be like when you meet a person from Facebook, it just seems bizarre. I mean, like, who works there? She came round and she desperately wanted me to do the next campaign on Indiegogo. It's really weird, but it's a little bit like anything, you know. Once you've got your bank, you kind of think, oh, I'll change to another bank. No, well, I'm not just staying in my own bank. And I know how Kickstarter works now. I know. I taught a lot of people who were first-time backers to trust Kickstarter, and I didn't really want to have to say, oh, you know, we did this whole thing on Kickstarter, I'm now doing it on Indiegogo, and sort of teach them to trust something again. I haven't backed anything on Indiegogo before, but I have on Kickstarter, so I've just got a bit of a better relationship with Kickstarter, and I see, sorry, I'm really, anyway, Kickstarter, I know, has got a tech-loving kind of, you know, there are people who will respond to my kind of language. So if I say revolutionary user thinking, I know that that resounds with a kind of tech audience on Kickstarter. I don't really understand the Indiegogo audience as well, because I think they do loads more social stuff, lots of social kind of community-based stuff, and I don't know whether they would like what I'm doing as much. Maybe, but yeah, at the moment, yeah, it's sort of, it's really funny. I keep thinking, you know, oh, I'm going to change my factory, or I'm going to change my distributor, or I'm going to, but when you get there, you suddenly go, they did it well the first time, so the risk of moving is weirdly high, or maybe it isn't. But no, I didn't. I think I stick with Kickstarter because I know it. So it's not for the greatest and most scientific reasons, sadly. Yeah.
Another question. Just,
Yeah.
You built all these sort of, you know, partnerships with people to build the business. Are any of those actually based in Germany? And sort of, have you found it? You're operating totally basically out of the UK. Is that because just a cultural thing, or what's the startup community like over there, or what's the appetite like over there?
So
in Berlin.
I set up the company in the UK just because I thought it would be easier to do it in my own language. So it's a UK company that is based in Reading, because I've got an address here.
Yeah.
And I just sort of spend time in Berlin, but the tech, I mean, it's a real tech hub. Like it's called, like, so a road in Germany, like a big road, is called an alley, like an alley, but giant. And so they call it Silicon Alley, right?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
And you've got the factory there, which is sort of the space where all of the bigger tech startups sit. And, you know, if you're sitting in a bar in Berlin, then you're likely to be sitting next to a 23-year-old millionaire. And it's sort of, in some spaces in the city. So you get a little bit of that. But you also have, it's a very young city. So the rents are still cheap because the Russians built in East Berlin anyway, they're sort of east of the city. The Russians built so many apartments just before the wall came down, that when the wall came down, everyone left. You had this huge supply of living space and no one demanding it. And so the rents are slowly increasing as people want to be in the city, but it doesn't really have an established industry, apart from now artists, tech startups, and media, basically. So those are the sort of people who are there. People in Germany love rucksacks, but they also love looking like they're going up a mountain. It's sort of a thing. They in their rucksack, they will have a rucksack that is this size, and they only have their wallet in it, and a newspaper. And, it's their thing. They really do rucksacks, but they also want to kind of seem like they've got their Wanderlust and they're going up into the mountains, and so they wear their RiutBags or Giblin or whatever you call them. So yeah, it's sort of unrelated to the Berlin thing. It's actually a place where I can go and be almost completely anonymous, whereas I just sort of have a nice, calm life and get on with my stuff online. But I suppose I made this for London, really. I made this for Reading. I made it for the people who commute in and out of a big city and then who get on a plane and go somewhere. So it's not really focused on the German market, but quite a few people in Germany back anyway, because there's a lot of tech nerds who are on Kickstarter as well. They go for it. But yeah, so that's kind of... Oh, and in terms of the partners, the companies I partner with, it's all UK, just because it feels easiest. It's where I know the regulations, I know the laws here, so I'm kind of happy with how customs works here. So I can... I could do it via Germany, but there would be no need really. So I just, from China, it either comes by sea freight or air freight into Heathrow and goes up to Lincoln. And I've now got these good companies. So I'll keep them for the UK, but it's possible that I'll change it to do something else in Europe or different continents eventually. But yeah. Does that answer your question?
Totally. It's really good to have that sort of manufacturing sort of initiative over here as well.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what you mean? Yeah.
No. That wasn't my question. I was just really curious because obviously Germany's got such a fantastic reputation for manufacturing, and they're always, and innovation to some extent. Yeah. So it's really refreshing to see that we can compete. And that the climate's good. That you feel that this is actually was a preferable market to start up and grow. Yeah,
it's only because that is what I know, and that's where I'm starting, or at least the customer base in the UK. But in terms of actual manufacturing, funnily, I don't know whether this is perhaps what you were in part implying. So I'll just touch on this for a moment. So should I have manufactured in the UK? Should I have made?
No. I think it's a good thing. Not necessarily talking about outsourcing manufacturing or anything. Just sort of building a textiles company. Yeah. Whereas in Germany they've got a very strong reputation for that kind of stuff.
I might just quickly comment on that, because it was an important part of why do I manufacture in China? I called up, I thought, I had my whole revolution in user thinking thing, and I thought, it's an urban bag. I went to Manchester University, that's where the industrial revolution started, and so I was like, I'm going to call up all the manufacturers in Manchester. The industrial revolution was built on textiles, this is so perfect. Called them up, and they didn't take me seriously at all. They didn't want to do it. And I was like, why don't you just tell me how much it costs so that we can do this? And they wouldn't even entertain it. I'd never done it before, they wouldn't work with me. Called about 10 different manufacturers. And then I spoke to the people at D2M and just said, I don't actually know who's going to make this, because no one in the UK will even talk to me. And they said, the reason that people manufacture in China is not because it's cheap, because it's not the cheapest place in the world to manufacture. It's because they want to work with you. This is what they do, and this one factory that they hadn't previously worked with, which is where I now get all of my stuff manufactured. They make 1 million rucksacks a year. So they know how to do this. This is what they are set up to do. And when they got in contact with Daisy, who's my contact at the factory, and she's my counterpart, and she is the person who is looking after the RiutBags when I am not there, and I trust her down. She calls me day and night to tell me that there are problems, and I love that. And I always say, always tell me when there is a problem, Daisy. And she calls me and tells me it's brilliant. She's almost like, our standards are both up here, and it's fantastic. As soon as we were put in contact, she took me 100% seriously, and she, you know, when I was saying I want this to happen, she was slowing me down and saying, do you know what, this is much more realistic. We cannot promise this sort of stuff. And you just got this feeling immediately that this is a really conscientious, hardworking, realistic person who took me seriously. And I could only work with a manufacturer or any company in the world that can actually take me seriously. So I would have worked with any manufacturer in the world who gave me that kind of feeling at the beginning. And that only happened with this factory in China. I didn't spend years looking for a manufacturer. In fact, probably for the rest of my life, I'll be looking for the perfect manufacturer. But the reason I actually manufactured there was because there were people who were willing to work with me, and it's worked. So yeah, that wasn't quite your question, but I thought I wanted to share that anyway. Yeah. Cool.
Anything else? Let's conclude with thanking Sarah once again. And maybe, I don't know, if people wanted to come up and have a look at the rucksacks, by all means. So I brought mine in as well, but let's thank Sarah very much for her time this evening.
Yeah.
No, fantastic.
And if you think